I haven't been here in a little while. A few years, I think. Before last month, I came back, so I decided to speak. I've done a few shows, but a little bit, everything I'm going to talk
back
about.
there. Excuse me. Will you be good enough? Give the floor to Jennifer. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. No harm done. Just honestly.
And I'm a little nervous. So thank you. Everything I'm going to talk about ties in pretty much, so now my head's really going, because I thought I had a clue what I was going to talk about, now it's all exploding in my head. So who am I? I'm like a regular person, right? Single mom, 4 kids, struggled, poverty, the whole thing. And I think that's the key, is I'm a regular person, okay? And what I've done is, like my journey through life, which universe consciousness comes in, and what this is like a higher, we can reach like a higher mind when we clear this muddle that's going on in here. And what I'm going to talk about is, I'm going to explain part of my journey just to show about self-healing, how you can completely regenerate, and that you do have the power, we all do. This doesn't just exist in me or him or, and everybody can educate themselves by finding out what you're passionate about. I'm passionate about quantum physics. So, I gotta breathe because I'm a little nervous. So my journey started, well, I guess when I was born. I almost died. I was supposed to not live. I was a breech baby, so I came in very traumatically. That led to probably one of the most traumatic lives, and I don't mean this but to see where I come from. It has been a very long, traumatic journey up until now. I started having children at 15. I have 4. My oldest is now 30, or he's turning 30. So I raised them and took care of them myself. So I started in Florida, which was a very difficult life. I don't normally speak about my life, but I thought I would bring it in so that you have an idea of where I come from and what I have to offer other people through this journey because of the things that I've experienced. Because most of us have experienced a lot of trauma. Even coming in, we carry a lot of trauma in. This is genetic DNA, it's combined through our parents. We carry this stuff in. And, so there's this life, and I started having children at a very young age. Married and divorced twice by 22. We're dealing with, sexual abuse, physical, psychological, emotional, like the list goes on, economic, right, being starved. I was flooded out by the ocean. I'm terrified of water. I had a friend stabbed in my home. It's been like a continuous thing, but I see the purpose, right? Everybody's got a purpose. And my life served, and I know it's going to take me a long way. Because by the end of all this trauma, I moved, me and my 4 children, my youngest was 7 weeks old, I moved us from Florida back to Canada because I was suffering from severe burnout. And down there, you really can't survive. So I dealt with a lot of homelessness, while pregnant with babies, the whole bit. But this also lends to what everybody else is going through. Like, I can see trauma in people's eyes. I feel people, and I understand where they're coming from. So I also dealt with severe alcoholism on a level that doesn't even make sense to me. Again, one of those genetic things, I have a very unusual tolerance, very high. By the time I was 31, I was chronic, which means I had gone into reverse tolerance. I am where an active alcoholic gets when they're in their 60s and 70s, by the time I was 31. That led to being misdiagnosed with bipolar. So, lovely medical industry, psychologists and everything, drugged me into a coma for 10 years. So I had no emotion, no thought. I was virtually dead. I had flatlined from all the medications, 23 pills a day. And I hit a point where I couldn't live like that anymore. It's just pure silence. I had bloated up. Why? Because toxins are these chemicals are fat soluble, so they do store up. So I blew up, zoned out into a coma. My kids lost me for about 10 years. But I fought my way back. And this is where the story kind of turns around. I had even lost my children where I shouldn't have. They walked out the door, and I was completely helpless. That's CIS. I was already getting me and my family help, but what they did was destroy us. They walked out the door with my kids 3 weeks before Christmas. And yeah, I died. Like that's how this happens, right? We reach these points in our lives. We are crushed down by the system. It's not designed to lift us up, it is designed to crush us. So it's the medical industry. It just adds it on. So we have a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics and all these parents that can't cope with not being able to parent. Blaming, self-blame. I blamed myself. I thought, you know, I tried going to school, things would happen, I'd get blown out. And it was hard because I was highly intelligent. So I got straight A's, you know, going to college, and I had a 6th grade education. So it was really difficult. I worked a lot. I worked 80 hours a week. I did everything I possibly could to move myself forward. And every time I would try, I'd get crushed back. So I've experienced this system on so many levels in 2 different countries. And yeah, there's a consistent crushing of the soul, crushing of, you know, physically, emotionally. It's intense. And the problem is we have this core in us anyway. So, and what I mean is, like, we're carrying forward all this trauma. You know, it's fear-based energy, really. It's trauma through, you know, your family histories. We do carry these things forward. And when we don't understand even how we're creating our lives to be, I think that's the problem. We think it's all happening to us, and that it's random, and that we have no control. And that's the biggest lie, is we do have all the control. You know, everything we need is inside of us. And this is what I found when I sit in silence, I'm all drugged out, and I'm in this coma, physically in a coma, right? Physically, but not consciously. Okay, your consciousness is not your physical body. It is another part, all right? It is the self up there that's screaming to you to just wake up. You know, we all feel it. We all feel that inside us. Deep down, it's like, I know who I am. And that's who I want to be, right? But it's a hard road to get there. And that's another trick, is it's hard. There's no easy way out. But we are the ones that are stepping up for this. This is why this wave, what is it, right? This wave is about this healing. And the fact that we're not separate pieces. You know, we're not just emotional creatures, we're not just physical, we're not just intellectual, and we're not just spiritual. We are the combination here. And we're living divided. And I'll tell you, the first step in like the recovery was, well, one, I needed to be alive, feel alive. I needed to feel something. I could look at my children and know I love them. Why couldn't I feel it? You know, why did I have, like I was blank? But that's when the consciousness kind of took over and gave me that drive. So I tried to work with doctors to go off medications. It took me 5 years. I had to get away from the doctors and learn myself. So I learned about the physical body, I learned about health, I learned about mental, like the brain, cell health. I started learning. I learned about protracted withdrawal. So every time, because I had gained all that weight, you have to like definitely wean off all these medications. And to go off of all of them took me about 5 years. And in the process, see, I never stopped pushing myself. I would drop weight, you know, focus on health, eliminating things from my diet. I knew it was, you're gonna put your body into a shock if you try doing too quick. So I slowly started taking away and adding something new. So again, this took time, and now my whole lifestyle is transitioned, right? It's normal now. You know, it's a natural way of living. You know, and everything's gone, this is an innate knowing. Nobody had to tell me. You know, I started researching, learning how the body works, and realizing the doctors don't know this. You know, when you start going off medications, the withdrawals are harsh. Like, they're much, much worse than actually being on medications. And when I start losing weight, focusing on health, it's kicking stuff up in my body. I would start almost like an insanity, but I knew enough to separate from my own mind, because it would go insane, you know, and that was because of the medications being erratically thrown into my system. And I knew, because I would stop eating, I would stop sleeping for weeks. And I remember a couple times I reached a point where I felt suicidal, like I can't, but I knew it wasn't me. So I would call for help, like, look, you gotta come get me, because I can't do this. So it was a very long, hard process. I'd be walking down the street, I'd have to stop to puke. I wouldn't be able to move for days, vertigo. And it was, but I never stopped. You know, I learned more, I pushed myself harder, you know, I changed my life. I changed everything in it. My kids' lives were turned upside down, and I knew, you know, I had to basically bring the house down, you know, down to the foundation and begin again. And with 4 kids, that was difficult because they had to go through the entire process with me. And it's taken, you know, my youngest is now 18, my oldest is going on 30. And this whole process has been close to 10 years. Another thing was I wasn't bipolar, I had post-traumatic stress disorder. So I figured that out. So what I learned was how the brain worked, the neural pathways, and what would happen every time you triggered. See, when you have post-traumatic stress, which believe it or not, most people do, okay, a lot of people are suffering from this because they're getting triggered, they're reacting, but it's not them. They're reacting to every trauma they've ever experienced in their life, all at once, directed at whoever's in front of them. And triggers are impossible to pinpoint. You cannot. But what happens in here, you begin to recognize. So I started journaling and journaling and journaling because my mind would go insane. It had a mind of its own. But I knew it's like, this isn't where I live. I also knew that if I didn't stop it, I would go insane because the mind can become pretty impossible to even, there's so much chatter, so much negative, like, it's so destructive. You know, that's what I realized is these thoughts, my mind here, that's supposed to be on my side, be part of me, is really the enemy. You know, it's trying to destroy me, it's trying to destroy my life. It destroys anything or any possibility of any good coming in. So this is when I decided, I learned about how post-traumatic stress worked in the brain, so I decided to rewire my brain. And that took about 5 years or so of a lot of journaling, finding my cycles. You know, I would journal, I had a journal for a year, and I was about to write in it, and I thought I'll read it first. And I'm reading through, and I'm about to write the same story I had already written in there 3 times. Same exact story, which says to me, it's me, okay? It's not the other people that I'm dealing with. Why is it always the same exact story? Because it's my mind. So I started basically, you know, picking at my brain and removing, you know, thoughts. I started meditating. I learned how affirmation work, right? Because how the neural pathways are, it's through repetition that we build neural pathways. That's why a lot of the stuff, that'll get me totally off onto a different topic, so I'll bring it back. So the repetitiveness, why you write it all over the place and look, is because that repetitive builds those pathways. And the less you think about something, the weaker those pathways become and eventually delete. So you can slowly shift your mind into a better state, right? A more positive state. So after going through very tedious, I only kind of, and it's really difficult to even explain how I even know, but it's because my mind is completely clear. There's no chatter, and if anything enters in, you know, I immediately know. But there's more to this, which I'm going to get into, is the spiritual aspect. I hope this is making sense. It's a lot of stuff I'm trying to cram together in a small period. So the rewiring the brain, it took about 5 years or so of like consistent, constant work. The meditations, the sitting still, the tuning into every aspect of my body, right? Mind, the emotions, and the higher consciousness. I started learning about quantum physics and different things like that, health, like raw food diets, you know, how it works and why, and just everything. Transitioning everything like table salt and margarine, you know, the terrible things that we shouldn't have anyway. They are poisons, removing poisons like the GMOs as much as possible, these things. This did lead me to, as soon as my head was clear, now I have available this amazing tool, that I can absorb knowledge and information. And I started getting into quantum physics and cosmology and all this for quite a few reasons. I think it's natural with this when you become more spiritual minded. I started recognizing and noticing a lot more was going on than just me. In my life, synchronicities, things coming to me, anything I needed was placed in front of me. If I needed a tool to heal myself, it was put there. I could see the evidence of everything. If I asked for something, I received it. I remember standing in my living room and saying that, this life it's not in alignment with me anymore. This doesn't fit. It doesn't fit who I'm becoming, it doesn't fit who I am. And another one was, I wanted to create consciously, not subconsciously, right? I wanted to bring it all forward. So the universe assisted me in that, and that's been a lot of fun. So, and no, it hasn't, it's been sheer hell. But that is the pathway to it. I gotta take this off because I'm melting. So, I think it's being nervous too. So, entering into the spiritual realm, I realized, which I never did a lot of studying on that, the spiritual, because nothing really resonated with me, like religion or spiritual. There's a lot of different ideas and perceptions, and it just didn't fall in line with mine and what I believed or what I was feeling. And quantum physics kind of went hand in hand in how I was experiencing what I was experiencing, because it explained energy. And I realized that that's who I am. I'm about energy. I understand it. I understand that more than anything physical. I understand the energy aspects of it, even physical, like the healing, like health-wise. I started. I hope is this making sense? It's kind of hard sometimes when you're. So through the meditation, I started focusing on the chakra. I started focusing on bringing things forward, like traumas, bringing the pain forward, seeking these things out, seeking actual healing within myself. And it was definitely guided at the same time. So the universe kind of works with you. It stays in alignment. So whatever level you're at that you can understand and that you're in alignment, you're given, that knowledge and understanding and the information that's needed at that level. So it's like you can never jump too high, like beyond where you can process. And this is where it gets into a lot of things actually that I can't articulate, because they're things that are experienced. The more in tune I became with my body, the more I focused on the purity of myself, right? The regenerating, the healing. Like as I moved through this physical aspect of healing, which shifted me into this emotional and into the intellectual, and then rose me right up into this higher conscious self, that I view everything from. And a lot of it's hard to, okay, so through the spiritual journey, I started, you go through waves. So you go through, it begins with this like nice wave of a lot of pain, suffering, healing, and it's all healing, but it can be very, very painful, and that's physically, emotionally, intellectually. You kind of go through these different waves of healing naturally. The more I went through these waves, the more I pushed myself forward, the more I decided I wanted to know, I want to understand, I want to go here. I want to go to the universe, and I want to understand it. The faster these waves, until it's a consistent down. And this is like the dark night, where you enter in and you literally have to face the deepest, darkest fears. And this is where I want to lend who I am to others, because of all these different levels. So first you go through the physical, which is not just the physical healing, but also the awareness that everything around you is corrupt, upside down and backwards. So you kind of dive down that rabbit hole of, holy cow, where am I? This world is completely backwards and upside down. But that shifts you into the next level and next level. It's all So as I'm going down this way, it's like entering into this dark night, which, nobody steps forward and says you're going into the dark night. You just find yourself there. And it's a very personal, lonely journey. You end up very isolated. The things that you are experiencing and going through, you're in it alone. And I had to face, and this is the biggest thing, is through your healing, you're not just experiencing it in your mind or in your body. You experience it in your reality, right? There is nothing that comes to you that does not resonate. It is all vibrational match. What we don't understand is where this reflection, why is this reflection happening, right? Why am I experiencing all this in my life, right? And it's for that reason. It's a reflection of what you need to work on and heal until you reach a point where, the reflection kind of shatters and you're real. I don't know. But anyway, so I entered into this dark night and it took about 3 years. And in the physical world, not just in me, I had to face the deepest, darkest fears. This is when I started realizing what people were going through and why people don't have that kind of control. And what is karma? Because it has nothing to do with what kind of person you are. I know that because I've always known that I have a good heart. I would never harm. I can't squish a bug. So that can't be right. That my life is this living hell because I'm somehow, this karmic energies are true, but not in that sense. What we are dealing with, even in each other, are these karmic energies, and they're energies that are calling out and bringing in. So it's like the opposite. So everything that's happening is like this opposite. It's the backwards, just like the world. You see it's upside down, it's backwards. Well, everything you are experiencing is like that. So you're going to experience until you overcome whatever fear. And everything has this fear base, right? And it's an irrational fear. But through those fears, we create more and more trauma, more. And it just starts so all these energies, that's what they're there. And I have figured out what these energies are, if anybody's interested, because it's a little bit of stuff I can explain. All right, so we all know the particles and quantum physics and the light, everything's made up the atoms, right? We understand the atoms are the foundation of pretty much everything, right? Not pretty much everything. And the vibration, the force that is creating these atoms and the frequency or the vibration that they're vibrating determines the shape. And I know there's a lot of other things but let's keep it simple. So each atom has a force. That force is what creates particles into being. And this is the part that's kind of hard to explain. So basically, the force is made up of what energy? And if you understand Tesla and the major scientists, Einstein and everything, they understood that the ether was the key, right? Because it's 95% space, and you're 95% space. So what is this space? That is the most powerful energy. It's not just air you're breathing. It is life force itself. It's consciousness itself. It is what flows through you, in that 95% space. So if we look at the universe, it's 95% space. So what is all this space? That's the biggest question. And this was my thought on what we're living through and why, with these karmic energies, because they're actually energies. And I'll explain how I understand these in a minute. So I didn't plan on telling this part. So all this energy, you take a trauma that's happening, right? That's very powerful energy. Fear. Fear is a very powerful energy. And this also ties into paranormal and things like that. When a trauma happens, the energy, that fear-based energy is vibrated in, let's call it the matrix, or whatever, this ether, this empty space that everything is created out of. Particles are a part of the same thing, all right? They come into being in the same, it's the same energy, it's one energy. So when a trauma happens and it vibrates, and this is just my theory, from learning, when it vibrates into this energy, and if we could truly understand that this is the powerful energy that's swirling around us, it's not just the air we breathe, you'd see that like an actual energetic, like energy body, not a conscious being, right? A trauma-based energy is created that is reliving trauma over and over again. It doesn't know anything else. It's not a conscious being. It's a vibration, all right? It's like imprinted in time and space, even though time and space doesn't exist either, but it's being imprinted into this energy. When we are moving along, let's say, these energies are absorbed, all right? So when there is like a vibrational match, and I even have a theory where the first trauma-based energies began, but I won't get into that. Because we're absorbing through vibrational match. So, and there's two sides, right? The side where the trauma was caused, like the one the trauma was caused to, and then the one causing the trauma. So there's two sides. So you have the narcissist and the martyr, or the abused and the abuser, right? They're a perfect match. Why? Like why do we find ourselves in these situations? Even in the back of your mind, you're going, what am I doing? Why do I feel like I have no control? Why is all this happening and it feels like I don't have any power over it? Like it's happening to me, right? It's got a life of its own, all these things that are happening. And it's realizing, that there's more to the story. There's so much more that we're not seeing. Like we see on a spectrum, right? The spectrum we see is like 4% of what's actually there. We're dealing in energy more than anything. It's all energy, your energy, down to those vibrating atoms. It's all energy. And how the reason why I jumped into this and why I understood it, and even the absorption and understanding that we're absorbing, that this is what's blocking our chakra, well, our entire system. We have a full system, and it's these energies that keep us blocked and separated, and why we interact and behave the way we do, and why we do so much damage when deep down we know we love ourselves. It's like even the self-hate, there's another voice behind it, that's like, what is happening? It's a very powerful force that we're dealing with, that we're only coming into like now to start seeing like little glimpses of what actually is happening. And what really, I don't know, like when you look at what they're doing, let's say the attack on children, like these serious traumas that they're doing to human beings. Like it's just a mind boggle, right? I mean, how can we torture human beings? But what it's doing is creating more and more of this trauma-based energy, these fear-based energies. So it's keeping us almost in this vortex. Excuse me. The only problem, is it doesn't ultimately have any power, right? As soon as we realize that it's fear, and we overcome that fear, and recognize, wait, that's not who I am, right? This isn't me. This is me. So I'm going to step over here. I'm no longer doing that because it's not right. It's like it becomes, I don't know, I see it in everybody and everything, all around, right? And we don't understand. Even people that abuse dogs, abuse animals. Why, right? And I truly believe it's because they're completely unaware of these trauma-based energies that are playing through. Because that's the only thing trauma can do, right? Is play itself over and over. So we cycle over and over through the same thing until we finally overcome it, right? We finally go, no, that's not me. I'm not doing that to myself anymore or to somebody else. I'm going to step over here. And slowly, we start shifting more and more. Slowly, it becomes really easy to say, that's harmful, right? This isn't, so I'm going to step over here. And the more we do this, the more we release, all right? We literally transmute these trauma-based, these fear-based energies. This is why, like even on television, the news, the reason why it's so dangerous is, one, our subconscious speaks in symbolism. And when you start really paying attention, the symbolism is unreal, and you don't know what it's speaking into you. So it's triggering, most of these shows, the news, it's triggering these trauma-based energies that are within people. So it triggers them so that they start reacting more. So it's feeding it. It's feeding these trauma. Like, look at TV, look at the news, look at it. It's constantly feeding us. It's telling, like, it's speaking to us in a language that we don't understand, right? It's speaking to our subconscious. It's speaking to our emotions. It's speaking to on all these levels. But it's keeping everything separated, and it's all fear. And how do we, the way we find freedom is literally by that inner journey. It's never going to happen externally. Like, you're not going to change the system, but you can stop using it. You have a choice, right? I have a choice. I healed myself, and I had a crooked back, the scoliosis, severe. I had herniated disc. I was well overweight. I had, you couldn't touch my muscles, all right? Not a single spot on me. Even a tap, it felt bruised. I suffered from severe nerve pain, throughout my body, especially my hands and feet. The pain I lived in, chronic pain my whole life. And it just progressively got worse until I decided I'm done. This isn't a life, and I completely rejuvenated my entire body. My body, my mind, my emotions, my soul, I rejuvenated myself. So we don't need them. And that's what they're afraid of. We can rejuvenate. I've watched it happen to my entire body. I watched it happen to my emotions. I never knew how incredibly compassionate and loving, like, I feel like my soul's on fire. And it feels like pure heart, right? It's like when you can care about, like, I'm sorry, my friend tossed a bug into the water, and it made me panic, and I had to save the bug, because we're connected. It's not a stupid thing, I can't kill bugs because I literally feel that thing's pain, all right? I feel what's happening in my animals. I knew when my son, Snake, was unhappy. He has a snake, his name's Oliver, and as it turns out, his cage was too small. He had the wrong cage. And I knew he was unhappy. I kept bringing it up to my son. Something's wrong. I could feel it. I feel people. And this is through this journey, and I have to wrap it up, and there's so much more. I started experiencing energy, and this is where I can't really articulate, because to articulate something that you're experiencing can be very difficult. I've tried a million times, and either I sound insane or it's completely misunderstood, and that can get really frustrating. But I started feeling the energies releasing from my chakra and the rest of my system. I feel the cycle of it. It feels like rivers flowing through my body 24/7. Like literally rivers, a lot of different forms. Every energy has a different form. I experience people, let's say somebody's about to text me, right? So people I know that I'm connected to, I'm close with, I feel there, I can sense them. Everybody has a signature, like a special feeling that you feel. Everybody has their own. And I feel it coming, and then I'll see them, I'll smell them, I'll physically feel their energy. So the electromagnetic field, I feel it all over my body. And it's like, this is why I isolate, because when too many people are thinking of me, it gets crazy. I can't sleep a lot because there's just rushing energy, not just from other people, but also from within myself. And this is where I started seeking, self-educating, learning what is energy, what is happening. I need to understand because I'm experiencing it. I feel everything, Now I do Reiki. I should bring Reiki into it because I'm a Reiki master, but I got my Reiki master certificate so that other people can see something tangible. But I was already in phenomenal ways, just through like touching somebody's hand, healing them. And then I experience it, but I release it. So just real quick, because I know I'm running out of time. It took about 20 seconds, and this guy didn't even believe in it. It's like, you don't have to. It's energy. I understand energy. So he let me. He had smashed his thumb over 20 years ago. He had no use of it. Severe pain. If he jammed it or anything, it would send him through the roof. I spent about 20 seconds, I just put my hand over it, and he has full use still, months and months later, full use. And this was energy work. And is how I understand life. Another I did a treatment on, and I said, well, it feels like you have pain coming down here, across the lower back, and down the right leg. And he was like, yeah, about 10 years ago, I hurt my back really bad on that side, he explained, and he's had chronic pain, he said, until now. And it's never returned. So, like, this is who we are. It's not just, you know, I don't know, like, woo, you know, there's a lot of things that can't be explained, but you know what, they can be. There is a lot more, and when you start thinking in terms, just like Tesla, of energy, vibration, frequency, you know, when you do start feeling your way through it, listening, you know, this noise in your head, you don't have to attach to it. You know, learn how to meditate, sit still for a minute. You know, then sit still for 5. I couldn't do a 2-minute meditation 9 years ago. I can sit for an entire day in complete silence and not a single thought and just observe my surroundings. That, like, this, it's a little extreme, I know, but it's just where I'm at. I feel like this life has brought me here so that now I can return it. You know, we've got to go through these things so we can understand, so that we can help others get through the same. Because we're all going through that process. Whether we're aware of it or not, this process is happening. You know, we are shifting, we are waking up, and there's a hell of a lot more to it all than, you know, your powerless, physical, small human being. Because that's what they want you to believe, is that you're completely powerless. You're just a small, insignificant human, you know, mortal that's gonna die. And this isn't true. You know, and this is what we're starting to remember, is we're much, much more than that. You know, and we're not mortal. You know, we leave this body. This body belongs to the earth. This is where it was created. It's created from nature. We return it. We move on. Now, we have a choice to heal, you know, and that we can choose. We do have that power. We can heal. We got to tell ourselves, I am healing, because your body's listening. Your DNA is listening. There's so much more I wish I could get into. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. We'll be back to do the Reiki thing, I hope.
Well, this is all about the Reiki.
I know,
Yeah.
I know, but get into
there's
it.
so much more. It was a really hard
Yeah.
thing.
But a lot of people have to understand that you do have control.
You have
And
the
it's
power.
up to you to take control. I've dealt with people all my life that were out of control. And I used to feel pity for them, but I ran out of pity.